April 18. The Western Pacific Ocean. Hundreds of miles from the nearest coastline. The nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, USS Resolute, sliced through calm blue water at nearly 30 knots. The carrier had spent weeks conducting intensive flight operations. Everything that happened on the flight deck followed strict procedures. Every movement, every hand signal, every launch, every landing, everything depended on precision. Today's mission appeared routine. One FA-18E Super Hornet, callsign Raven 212, was scheduled for a combat readiness exercise. The aircraft had already completed its sortie and was returning to the ship. The pilot, Lieutenant Ryan Mercer, 34 years old, over 1,800 carrier landings, one of the squadron's most experienced aviators. The landing signal officers prepared for another textbook recovery. The weather was nearly perfect. Wind over deck, 32 knots. Visibility, more than 15 miles. Sea state, moderate. Cloud cover, broken at 6,000 feet. Flight deck temperature, 27 degrees Celsius. Nothing suggested danger. Below deck, mechanics prepared the next aircraft. Above deck, yellow shirts guided incoming traffic. Purple shirts fueled aircraft. Green shirts operated arresting gear. Blue shirts moved equipment. Red shirts stood ready for emergencies. Everyone knew their role. Among them stood Seaman Apprentice Noah Carter, 19 years old, fresh from technical school, only 82 days aboard the carrier. He wasn't supposed to become a hero. He was only there to learn. By sunset, the entire Navy would know his name. Scene 1, the perfect recovery. Narration. Far above the carrier, Raven 212 completed its final turn. The Super Hornet descended through scattered clouds with practiced precision. Inside the cockpit, every movement was automatic. Altitude, speed, angle of attack, throttle, trim. Years of training reduced thousands of decisions into instinct. Below, the aircraft carrier looked impossibly small. A floating runway, barely longer than a city block. And yet pilots landed there every day. The landing signal officer watched through powerful binoculars. His voice remained calm, but every word mattered. Pilot dialogue. Resolute Tower, Raven 212 commencing. Fuel state 1.8. Aircraft checks complete. Tower, Raven 212 continue. Winds 310 at 32. Deck is clear. Landing signal officer. Looking good. On glide slope. Power. Little right. Come left. Hold it. You're coming in nicely. Narration. The fighter crossed the stern. Main landing gear struck the deck. Smoke burst from the tires. The arresting hook slammed into the steel deck, then caught the third wire perfectly. In barely 2 seconds, the aircraft stopped from over 130 knots to 0. Another flawless carrier landing. Or so everyone believed. Technical explanation. Carrier aircraft stop using arresting cables stretched across the deck. The aircraft's tailhook catches one of these cables, which is connected to hydraulic engines beneath the flight deck. These absorb the enormous energy of the landing and bring the aircraft to a halt in just a few hundred feet. Suspense ending. But something underneath the deck had already begun to fail. No one knew it yet. Scene 2, something isn't right. Narration. As deck crews approached the aircraft, something unusual happened. The jet moved. Not under engine power. Not because the pilot released the brakes. It rolled. almost imperceptibly. Just a few inches. One yellow-shirt director frowned. The aircraft should have remained motionless. Instead, it rolled again. The deck beneath the tires glistened. Hydraulic fluid. Almost invisible. Dangerously slick. Deck crew. Hold position. Chock runners. Move. Pilot. Brakes are fully applied. I'm not moving. Deck crew. Negative, sir. Your aircraft is rolling. Narration. Confusion spread faster than orders. Crew members rushed toward the aircraft carrying wheel chocks. But the carrier rolled with an unexpected swell. The fighter shifted another foot. Then another. Toward the edge of the angled flight deck. Technical explanation. Aircraft carrier decks are constantly moving with the sea. Even slight rolls can allow heavy aircraft to move if braking effectiveness is reduced or the deck surface becomes slippery. Suspense ending. The fighter was now moving. On its own. Scene 3, the deck comes alive. Narration. Alarms erupted across the flight deck. The calm rhythm vanished. Every sailor turned toward the drifting fighter. Yellow shirts waved desperately. Red shirts grabbed firefighting equipment. Blue shirts sprinted clear. The pilot increased brake pressure. Nothing. The aircraft continued creeping toward open water. 30,000 pounds of fighter. Moving silently. Relentlessly. Pilot dialogue. I've got full brakes. She's not stopping. Flight deck control. Emergency, emergency. Aircraft moving. Clear the landing area. Deck crew. Get chains. Move. Hurry. Narration. Heavy securing chains were thrown toward the landing gear. But before they could be attached, the carrier lurched again. The jet accelerated. Not much. Just enough. Enough to terrify everyone watching. Passenger reaction. There were no passengers. Only sailors. And for the first time that day, many experienced something they rarely admitted. Fear. Technical explanation. Once a heavy aircraft begins moving on a slick deck, stopping it manually becomes extremely difficult. The momentum quickly exceeds what a few people can safely resist. Suspense ending. Then, the left main wheel crossed a painted safety line. Beyond it, only ocean. Scene 4, the frozen moment. Narration. Time seemed to slow. The aircraft's nose pointed toward empty sky. The sea churned 50 feet below. The pilot remained strapped inside. Standard procedure was clear. If the aircraft became uncontrollable, evacuate. But opening the canopy took precious seconds. And every second, the aircraft moved farther. Deck crews hesitated. Running toward the jet could mean being pulled into the ocean with it. Nobody wanted to become the next casualty. Nobody moved. Pilot, I need assistance. I can't hold her. Flight deck control. Pilot, prepare to eject if necessary. Pilot, negative. Too low. Narration. Everyone searched for someone else to act. Someone with more experience. Someone higher in rank. Someone. Anyone. Technical explanation. Ejection seats require a minimum safe envelope. At carrier deck level, ejecting while an aircraft is already sliding overboard may not provide enough altitude for the parachute to deploy safely. Suspense ending. And then, one sailor broke formation. Scene 5, the 19-year-old. Narration. His name was Noah Carter. 19. New aboard. still learning hand signals, still memorizing emergency procedures. He had watched veterans freeze. He had heard the shouting. He had seen the fear. He didn't wait for permission. He grabbed the nearest heavy wheel chock. Then another, ignoring every scream telling him to stay back. He ran directly toward the moving fighter. The blast from the idling engines battered him. Heat shimmered around him. The deck vibrated beneath every step. Senior sailors shouted, "Noah, get back. You'll die." He kept running. "Noah, if nobody goes, he's gone. Pilot, what are you doing?" "Noah, trying to buy you 5 seconds." Narration: 5 seconds. That was all he believed he could give. Sometimes, 5 seconds changes history. Technical explanation: wheel chocks are heavy wedges placed against aircraft tires to prevent movement. On a moving aircraft of this size, placing them is extremely dangerous because the wheels can crush or eject the chocks with tremendous force. Suspense ending: Noah dropped to one knee, directly in front of the rolling wheel. Scene 6: Impact. Narration: the enormous tire approached. 30 inches. 20. 10. Every sailor watched in horror. Noah shoved the steel-reinforced chock beneath the tire with all his strength. The wheel struck. A deafening metallic crack echoed across the deck. The chock shattered. Fragments exploded across the flight deck. The fighter lurched upward. For one impossible moment, it actually stopped. Cheers almost erupted. Almost. Because beneath the aircraft, the broken chock slipped free. The jet moved again. Faster this time, straight toward the deck's edge. And Noah was still kneeling directly in its path. Pilot, no. Flight deck control. Move. Move. Narration: the distance between the nose wheel and open ocean was now measured in inches. The next decision would determine whether the pilot survived, or whether both men disappeared into the passive. Scene 7, the last 3 feet. Narration: the entire flight deck seemed to hold its breath. The massive FA-18 continued creeping toward the edge. Every inch felt slower than the last, yet no one could stop it. The carrier rolled gently with another swell. That tiny movement was enough. The aircraft lurched again. The nose wheel crossed the final deck marking. Only 3 feet remained before open air. Noah Carter looked over the edge. Far below, white waves slammed against the steel hull. The ocean looked endless. One mistake, one slip, and there would be no second chance. Behind him, dozens of sailors shouted conflicting orders. Some yelled for everyone to clear away. Others screamed to secure the aircraft. No one could agree. Training manuals never described a situation quite like this. For a few terrifying seconds, experience meant nothing. Only action mattered. Pilot dialogue: Mercer, tower, aircraft is still moving. Tower, can you increase braking pressure? Mercer, maximum brakes already applied. Tower, engine status. Mercer, left idle, right idle, no response from brakes. Flight deck dialogue: keep clear. He's almost over. Don't stand behind the aircraft. Watch the intake. Technical explanation: hydraulic braking systems rely on pressure to clamp brake discs inside the landing gear. If hydraulic pressure is compromised, or if the tires lose traction on a contaminated surface, even maximum pedal force may not stop the aircraft. Suspense ending. Then, the front landing gear rolled over empty space. Only the main wheels remained on the carrier. Scene 8. A pilot's impossible decision. Narration. Inside the cockpit, Lieutenant Ryan Mercer had milliseconds to decide. Stay inside or abandon the jet. Neither option guaranteed survival. If he released the brakes to climb out, the aircraft would accelerate. If he remained strapped in, he risked going into the ocean with it. Years of naval aviation training raced through his mind. Every emergency simulator, every safety briefing, every warning. None of them prepared pilots for this. He looked through the canopy. Straight ahead, nothing but blue ocean. He looked left. Noah was still there, trying desperately to wedge another damaged chock beneath the tire. Mercer couldn't believe it. The young sailor should have run. Instead, he was risking everything for someone he'd barely met. Pilot dialogue. Mercer, kid, get away from the aircraft. Noah, not while you're still inside. Mercer, you don't have enough time. Noah, I'm not leaving you. Narration. For a brief moment, rank disappeared. Experience disappeared. There were no officers, no enlisted sailors. Only two men refusing to abandon each other. Technical explanation. In real emergencies, pilots constantly balance aircraft preservation against personal survival. The safest choice isn't always obvious, especially when seconds separate life from catastrophe. Suspense ending. Then, a loud metallic snap echoed beneath the deck. Scene 9. The chain. Narration. Across the flight deck, Chief Petty Officer Mason saw one remaining possibility. It wasn't in the checklist. It wasn't standard procedure. But there was no time left. He grabbed a heavy securing chain, normally used after aircraft shutdown. It weighed nearly 70 pounds. Running with it across a moving carrier was exhausting. Several sailors joined him. Together they raced toward the fighter. Every step fought against wind, heat, jet blast, and fear. The aircraft continued sliding. The chain swung wildly. One wrong move could pull everyone beneath the wheels. Flight deck dialogue. Bring it here. Move. Move. Hook it. Hook the landing gear. Pilot dialogue. I've got maybe 10 feet left. Tower. All personnel clear the edge. Narration. Chief Mason ignored the order. He dropped to the deck, reached beneath the aircraft, and stretched the chain toward the landing gear. Technical explanation. Aircraft securing chains are designed to keep parked aircraft fixed to tie-down points during rough seas. They are not intended to stop a moving aircraft already carrying momentum. Suspense ending. The chain caught, but the deck fitting began ripping out of the steel. Scene 10. When steel breaks. Narration. The sound was unforgettable. Steel screaming against steel. Bolts tearing free. Metal bending under impossible force. The securing point held. For 1 second. Then another. Everyone watched, praying. The aircraft slowed. Almost stopped. Then, crack. The deck fitting exploded upward. The chain whipped through the air like a giant steel snake. Sailors threw themselves flat. The broken chain smashed into a parked tow tractor. Glass shattered. Equipment scattered across the deck. The fighter was free again. Now nothing remained between it and the ocean. Pilot dialogue. Chain failed. Tower. Understood. Chief Mason. Everyone clear. Narration. The order echoed across the flight deck. But Noah didn't move. Technical explanation. When a chain under extreme tension fails, the stored energy releases instantly. The resulting recoil can be deadly to anyone nearby. Suspense ending. The left main wheel reached the deck's edge. Scene 11. The volunteer. Narration. Silence replaced shouting. It lasted less than a heartbeat. Then another sailor stepped forward. Petty Officer Elena Brooks. Aircraft handler. 12 years aboard carriers. She looked at Noah, then at the sliding jet. Without speaking, she grabbed another chain. Others followed. One by one. Fear gave way to determination. Nobody wanted to be first. Now, nobody wanted to be last. The entire deck came alive. Yellow shirts, blue shirts, green shirts. Even mechanics rushed from nearby aircraft. The emergency had become everyone's fight. Flight deck dialogue. Together. Lift. Pull. Keep tension. Don't quit. Pilot dialogue. I can feel it slowing. Narration. Dozens of sailors strained with every ounce of strength. Not because they believed they could overpower 30,000 pounds, but because every fraction of resistance mattered. Every second bought another chance. Technical explanation. Human strength alone cannot stop a fighter jet. However, coordinated efforts can briefly reduce movement or stabilize an aircraft long enough for additional measures to be taken. Suspense ending. Then, the carrier hit another wave. Scene 12. The ocean DCIDES. Narration. The deck tilted. Only a few degrees. But on an aircraft carrier, a few degrees can change everything. The fighter suddenly accelerated. The sailors lost their footing. Jane slipped. Noah fell hard against the deck. Mercer felt gravity pulling the aircraft forward. The nose dropped lower. The horizon disappeared beneath the cockpit. Only ocean filled his windshield. This was it. The point of no return. Pilot dialogue. I'm going over. Tower. Brace. Noah. No. Narration. The front half of the aircraft now hung beyond the carrier. The jet balanced precariously on its main landing gear. Thousands of pounds suspended over open water. Every sailor stared. Nobody blinked. Technical explanation. Once an aircraft's center of gravity moves beyond its support points, gravity takes over. Recovery becomes nearly impossible unless external support is immediately applied. Suspense ending. Then, a powerful voice thundered across the flight deck. Scene 13. Full power. Narration. The air boss had arrived. He surveyed the chaos in one glance. Sliding aircraft. Pilot trapped. Deck crew exposed. Ocean waiting below. He made a decision no one expected. One that would later divide investigators for years. He grabbed the radio. His voice was calm, confident, absolute. Air boss dialogue. Raven 212. Advance both throttles. Pilot dialogue. Mercer stared in disbelief. Sir, if I do that. Air boss. I know. Trust me. Narration. Every sailor froze. Applying engine thrust on a carrier deck during an uncontrolled slide sounded insane. Jet blast could injure dozens. The aircraft could leap forward, or twist sideways, or flip completely into the sea. But the air boss understood one critical fact. If enough thrust could shift the aircraft's weight backward, even for a second, It might bring the center of gravity back onto the deck. It was an extraordinary gamble. Mercer's gloved hand slowly reached for the throttles. Noah looked directly at the cockpit. The engines began to spool. A low rumble became a roar. Heat waves blasted across the deck. Loose helmets tumbled away. Chains rattled violently. Everyone covered their faces. The twin engines screamed louder and louder until the entire carrier seemed to shake. The fighter jerked violently, but no one could tell whether it was moving back toward safety or launching itself into the Pacific CSCNE-14, the roar that changed everything. Narration: the twin engines reached military power. A wall of heat erupted behind the Super Hornet, forcing every sailor to shield their faces. Loose tools skidded across the deck. The carrier itself seemed to vibrate beneath the enormous thrust. For one terrifying heartbeat, nothing happened. The jet remained balanced on the edge of the flight deck, its nose hanging over open water. Then the engines dug in. The thrust pushed against the aircraft's own weight. The landing gear groaned. The arresting hook scraped across the steel deck. Slowly, almost impossibly, the fighter stopped sliding forward. Then it moved. Not toward the sea, but back. Only an inch. Then another. The entire flight deck erupted with shouts. Pilot dialogue. Mercer, I've got movement. Tower, keep power steady. Air boss, do not overcorrect. Hold exactly where you are. Flight deck dialogue. It's coming back. Keep clear. Don't rush it. Technical explanation. Jet thrust can shift weight distribution and overcome rolling momentum under very specific conditions. Attempting this is extremely dangerous and would only be considered as a last resort. Suspense ending. Just as hope returned, a warning light illuminated inside the cockpit. Scene 15, fire on the deck. Narration. Mercer looked down. The caution panel flashed bright amber. Hydraulic pressure. Fuel warning. Then, smoke. A burst of fuel, sprayed during the earlier struggle, ignited beneath the hot exhaust. Orange flames raced across the flight deck. Within seconds, black smoke engulfed the rear of the aircraft. The emergency that had almost ended had only changed shape. Pilot dialogue. Mercer, fire, fire behind the aircraft. Flight deck control. Crash crews move. Foam units forward. Narration. Red shirt firefighter charged through the smoke carrying hoses and extinguishers. Foam covered the burning fuel. The flames surged higher, then higher again. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. For several seconds, no one could even see the aircraft. Technical explanation. Jet fuel can ignite when exposed to extremely hot engine exhaust or sparks. Aircraft carrier firefighting teams train constantly because every second counts in preventing explosions. Suspense ending. Then, the smoke began to clear. Scene 16, everyone walks away. Narration. As the white firefighting foam settled over the deck, the outline of the fighter slowly emerged. It was still there. Damaged, scorched, but safely on deck. Lieutenant Mercer opened the canopy. Fresh air rushed into the cockpit. He climbed down carefully. The moment his boots touched the steel deck, the exhausted pilot removed his helmet. Across the flight deck, Noah stood silently. His hands shook. His uniform was torn. His face was streaked with grease, salt water, and sweat. Mercer walked straight toward him. Without saying a word, he embraced the young sailor. Around them, the flight deck burst into applause. Not because an aircraft had been saved, but because a life had. Pilot dialogue. Mercer, you ignored every reason to run. Noah, I wasn't thinking about the airplane. I was thinking about you. Suspense ending. But the biggest question remained unanswered. How had the aircraft started sliding in the first place? Scene 17, the investigation. Narration. Within hours, flight operations paused. Engineers inspected the aircraft. Deck crews photographed every inch of the scene. The damaged chains, the shattered wheel chocks, the arresting gear, the deck surface. Nothing was overlooked. Every radio transmission was preserved. Every security camera recording was collected. Investigators reconstructed the event frame by frame. Days turned into weeks. Finally, the answer emerged. The braking system itself had not failed. Neither had the pilot. Instead, investigators discovered a combination of factors. A small hydraulic leak had contaminated part of the landing area. At nearly the same moment, the carrier encountered an unexpected series of ocean swells, briefly increasing the deck's angle. The reduced tire grip, combined with the ship's motion, allowed the aircraft to begin rolling. Once momentum developed, stopping it became extraordinarily difficult. No single mistake caused the accident. It was a chain of small events, each harmless on its own, but dangerous when they occurred together. Technical explanation. In aviation, accidents are rarely the result of one failure. Most serious incidents occur when multiple small problems align at the same time, overwhelming the normal layers of safety. Suspense ending. The investigation wasn't finished. One final decision still had to be made. Scene 18, the review board. Narration. A Navy review board examined every action taken on the flight deck. Some questioned the air boss's order to advance the throttles. Others argued it had prevented the aircraft from going overboard. Noah's actions were debated as well. He had knowingly entered an extremely dangerous area. Some officers believed he had violated safety procedures. Others believed his courage had bought the precious seconds needed for the recovery. After reviewing every recording and interviewing every witness, the board reached its conclusion. The emergency decisions were made under extraordinary circumstances. No evidence suggested recklessness. Instead, they reflected the difficult choices people sometimes face when there is no perfect answer. Pilot dialogue. Board president. In emergencies, judgment matters as much as procedure. Suspense ending. One final ceremony remained. Scene 19, a name RMBRD. Narration. Several months later, the crew gathered on the flight deck once again. This time, there were no alarms, no smoke, no emergency, only silence. The captain stepped forward. Beside him stood Noah Carter, the same 19-year-old who had arrived aboard the carrier as an inexperienced sailor. The captain addressed the crew. Experience teaches skill. Courage reveals character. He presented Noah with a commendation recognizing his calm actions during the emergency. The applause echoed across the ocean. Noah accepted the honor quietly. He never claimed to be a hero. He simply said, "I did what I hoped someone would do for me." Scene 20, the final truth. Narration. The Super Hornet was eventually repaired and returned to service. Lieutenant Mercer continued flying. The carrier resumed operations. The damaged section of the flight deck was restored. The emergency became another case study for future sailors and pilots. Not because it showcased perfect procedures, but because it demonstrated teamwork under unimaginable pressure. Every person on that deck contributed, some with training, some with leadership, some with determination, and one with extraordinary courage. Ending. The sea is unforgiving. Aircraft carriers are among the most dangerous workplaces on Earth. Every launch, every recovery, every movement on the flight deck demands discipline, communication, and trust. This fictional story reminds us of an important aviation principle. Technology is essential. Training is critical. But in moments when everything begins to fail, human judgment, teamwork, and courage can make the difference between tragedy and survival. Sometimes history is not written by the most experienced person on the deck. Sometimes it is written by the one who refuses to stand still when everyone else freezes. Because heroes rarely know they're becoming heroes. They simply choose to act. The end.